In this next session, what we're going to do is we're going to take our HTML code and we're going to open that up and clean it up and then export it to a web server. And in order to do that, I'm going to open this with Adobe's Dreamweaver application, and we can see what we have done in Photoshop showing up right here. It's pulling off of this file right here, and it's getting all of the images out of our images folder. So let's take a look at the document. A couple things about Dreamweaver. First, if we want to just look at the code, we can hit this code button. We can also split it up so we can see both the code up here and the document down here, or we can just look at it in design, and that's primarily where I'm going to work right now. Now, what has actually happened is Dreamweaver has read the HTML code and basically created a table in the interface here and has fit all of the individual images exactly the way that we exported them from Photoshop. Now, if you recall, in our table we had a top, or in our exported image, we had these sections on the sides and on the bottom that we wanted to get rid of. And right now, there's no graphic there other than a spacer. And if you look at the interface here, you can see this area down here tells us the properties of whatever it is that we're looking at. So as I change graphics, the source of that graphic changes to the specific graphic that we exported from Photoshop. And here was a graphic that we had put a link on, and you'll see that my link is pulled over right here, and the target is already filled out, and that means that when the viewer of the email clicks on that graphical area of the email, it's going to open up a web browser and go to this particular link right here. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to get rid of these spacers to clean up my code. So I'm going to just delete the spacers, and I'm just going to click on it and hit delete each one of these. And then, because this is a table, this is actually a row, this is a column. Our main graphical areas are also columns and rows, and so I want to get rid of these different things. So if I right click, I'll have my table option, and I can delete that row right there. I can also go here, and I believe that I can go to one of these format modify table, and I can also get access to what I need to right here. So I'm just going to put my cursor where I want it to be and right click, and I'm going to delete that column. Come over here and delete this column, and then I'm going to come down here to the bottom and I'm going to delete that row. Now, it looked all crazy and we're wondering why, and that is because we've got some other stuff in here that is causing some spacing issues. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to highlight our entire table, and we're going to come down here to these little options, and we're going to clear the column widths and we're going to clear the column heights, because in our code we've if I just go back and edit, undo that, there are already some table heights and widths that have come on over from our export to Photoshop, export from Photoshop, that are constraining our image a little bit. So if we go back in the design and select our entire table and just go down here and clear the column widths, any of the preset column widths and lengths are taken out, so it's just based on the graphics that are determining the column widths. That's exactly what we want. And so now we have here a pretty clean HTML page that doesn't have extra spaces around it, that consists of our top graphic, our two side graphics, and then the graphics we have down here, one that's linked to one website and one that's linked to another website. Okay, now at this point there's two very important things that you'll need to pay attention to in order to make sure that your HTML code renders appropriately when you embed it into an email. And they are having the full source path in the source field, and also specifying a zero border around your graphics. And the reason that we do this is when we first brought this over from Photoshop, our images were embedded in this images file. So in the source, it copied over the path images and then each one of these graphics here. But when you are embedding this HTML code into an email, the computer is not going to know that this code is associated with a particular domain where that image folder will reside out on the internet. So you actually have to put the full path of the URL where exactly those graphics are on your web server. So, for example, in addition to using just images and then the graphic, I need to go all the way back and put the full HTTP www.main domain where that graphic is supposed to be. And I also want to specify a zero border around the graphic, because in some email programs the HTML code will render with a little bit of a space around the border, or possibly a blue line sometimes, especially when you create a hyperlink. And so I'll want to go into each one of my graphics and make sure that I've actually typed in the full path of the source graphic and then a zero border. So I would just go through and make those adjustments for each of my graphics. Now once we have our piece created, we can have a look at it here, and we can also go in and just have a look at the code, and we can also use this handy little feature that switches to live view, so I can actually see what it's going to look like as a web page. And there's my links, so it looks like everything's working pretty well. The next thing that we need to do is we actually need to upload this HTML page and the associated graphical files to the web server. So I have already set up my site here, and if you can take a look at the other video to go into a little bit more detail about how I did that. And what I want to do is look at my local files, and I have this HTML page and this images directory and everything in it, and I want to upload that to the web server. And so I want to put all of those files up there. And so what Dreamweaver is doing is it's taking what I just created and modified, as well as the image files that I exported from Photoshop and saved in that images file, and it's put that out on the web. So now if I go to the web and pull up a browser, I'm going to click on the specific site that I want to use, and I know the URL that I actually use. I can look at my remote view to see where it is. And there I see my HTML page that I have created from Photoshop to Dreamweaver. Now, oftentimes when you get one of these HTML emails, you see something up at the top in the email that says, can't see this view as a web page. Well, this is exactly where that would link to, the actual HTML page on the web server where you can view it as a web page. So there we have cleaning up our HTML code in Dreamweaver and uploading our files to the web server.